welcome back to the Move Better Project Isolation Edition. If you're watching this soon after I'm making it, you're staying in your house, hopefully, and you're probably looking for ways to exercise without being able to go to your gym. One of the most fundamental movements we have, whether as strength coaches, physical therapists, or just human beings, is squatting. And there's a whole spectrum of things that can be squatting, as the camera shakes because our dog just laid down and knocked his head against it. So working as a physical therapist, student right now, soon to be practicing doctor of physical therapy, every single patient I have does some form of squatting. Whether that's an older patient who's got a lot of functional deficits, maybe has, recovering from a stroke, is just working on sitting down in a chair, standing back up, probably a higher chair than that. Or whether it's a high-level athlete that I'm coaching in the gym and they're loading up a heavy barbell, a front squat or a back squat, and really working on developing power and strength throughout their lower body. It's all kind of the same thing, and it's the same pattern. And that pattern we call squat involves flexing, then extending hips, knees, and ankles all at the same time in a certain kind of pattern. So there's another big lower body pattern that we call hinge that a lot of people think of as a deadlift. So when I do a squat, I'm a little bit more upright with my trunk. I have a little bit more flexion of the ankles, a little bit more bending of the knees, whereas with a hinge or a deadlift, I'm more flexed at the hip as I come down into my starting position and then come back up. So those are kind of the differences between those two. But we're going to just talk today about my very first introductory level squat. And this is what I do with almost everybody that I'm teaching squats. Whether that's an athlete or a physical therapy patient or whoever. My dad, anybody I'm working with. So I call this a counterweight squat to box. So this is a 10-pound kettlebell. You can use anything that weighs 10 pounds. It doesn't have to be an exercise weight. A gallon of milk weighs about 10 pounds. That's something we talk to, something we talk to patients about who just had spinal surgeries. You can't lift more than 10 pounds, don't lift more than a gallon of milk. So that's something you can use if you have that, or just anything, fine that weighs about 10 pounds. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up, my feet go shoulder width apart. And I'll show you from this angle, maybe we can lower the camera and just kind of see how my feet are set up. I want to be slightly turned out. Okay, no more than maybe 15, 20 degrees each side. So ideally the insides of my feet are parallel, but a lot of people don't have the ankle flexibility to then do a squat in that position. They're going to want to be duck-footed. We don't want to be duck-footed. We want to be kind of somewhere in the middle here, maybe 15, 20 degrees of turnout. Big toe, pinky toe, heel are all on the ground. And that's important. As I squat, if I have limited ankle flexibility, I'm going to want to do something like this and lift my heels off the ground. You want to make sure your heels stay connected to the ground. That helps allow the muscles in the back of your body, your glutes, your hamstrings, to really drive the movement, which is what we want. So anyway, here's a little demonstration, and then we'll kind of talk about it. Feet about shoulder width apart. I'm going to tighten my abs. That's going to keep my lower back straight. I want to preserve that shape for now. There's lots of different ways to do a squat. We'll talk about some of those in a minute, where you maybe just let that go and that's fine. But in this case, we want to keep that shape constant throughout the movement. So I'm going to hold my weight here to start. I'm going to take a big breath in as I go down, lock in, reach the weight forward, come back, touch, breathe out as I stand up. So what I'm doing here, the reason I'm using a counterweight is that this allows me to stay relatively upright as I'm getting down to this bottom position and keep my back straight. It actually makes it a little easier. Adding weight can make some things easier sometimes. Counterintuitive. If I don't have a weight, if you imagine a line through the middle of my foot, half of my body weight has to be in front of that line, half of it has to be behind, or I'm going to lose my balance one way or another. So if I do a squat without a counterweight and I try to stay upright like I just did, I'm going to lose my weight backwards. My toes are coming up, I'm having a hard time balancing. So if I'm not using a counterweight, which is totally fine, then I have to hinge a little farther over. So that's another totally fine way to do it, but I've found that teaching people doing this initially, it's a little easier to use a counterweight. So 10 pounds, no more than that, I would say, is good. And again, feet shoulder width, squeeze the butt, belly's tight, big breath in. Breathe out. So that's a really, really simple lower body exercise that can get you started if you're not great at squatting, if you haven't done a lot of them, or even if you have done a lot of squats, but your technique is just not something you've thought about, or it may be a little bit dodgy. That's a great place to start. The number one thing that is going to be limiting you and most human beings in squatting is your ankle flexibility, your ability to dorsiflex. Basically go from here to here. Because if my ankles are stiff, you can imagine if I'm wearing ski boots and I try to squat, my knees can't go forward, and then I end up losing my weight backwards. So if that's you, which it probably is because you're a human being who wears shoes, then start working on maybe stretching your ankles a little bit. We can do something like this against the wall. I can have my knee straight, I can have my knee bent. Or if you want to keep it really basic, just get down into a squatting position, hang on to something, and just kind of lean side to side. Work on flexing your ankle a little bit. So, if you want to get started working with a little home workout based around squats, try this movement. Try this little counterweight squat to box. See if you can work on staying stable through here. You should feel this in your glutes. Your butt is really the key muscle group here. Breathe in, come down. Breathe out as you stand up. See if you can do maybe 3, 4, 5 sets of 10. That would be a great place to start. And you'll know you did it right if the next day if your butt is sore. Because that means you're using your glutes, getting that big prime mover to activate and not just using your quads to do everything, which is something that we see a lot of people do. So that's all for today. Get squatting, get started, stay moving while you're all stuck in your houses. And I just want to add, I hope everybody watching this right now is practicing social distancing. Stay home unless you absolutely have to, as much as you can. Please isolate. We got to stop the spread of coronavirus. Stay safe, everybody. See you tomorrow.